yesterday in Biddeford, Maine, ICE immigration officers shoot and kill a guy. He was a Colombian national who was in America. They shoot and kill him in Maine. That's basically all you're going to hear about this story from the establishment media. What they will not tell you is that the ICE officer shot and killed the Colombian national as he was allegedly driving in the direction of the officer. We saw that exact situation play out in Minnesota during the ICE raids last year. So there's an investigation going on. It doesn't seem like there was a lot of camera footage or body cams in this case, which is good for the libs. You know, the libs want to pretend that when there's no body camera footage, it's because something egregious occurred on the part of the officers, and this is the fascist right-wing state oppressing the poor, helpless, marginalized communities. But that's not really what happens. You'll recall that the libs about 10 years ago made this big push for body cameras on cops, and then the moment that happened, the moment they got the body cameras on cops, they realized that the cops are in the right statistically 100% of the time, and that all of the supposedly, oppressed, victimized perpetrators, they were basically always in the wrong, and the cops, if anything, were too restrained. So you're going to see a lot more out of this ICE shooting in Maine. What's strange, it's not really strange when you analyze it, but what seems strange at first glance is that the ICE-involved shooting in Maine comes just days after another ICE-involved shooting in Texas, one that you probably didn't even hear that much about, if you heard about it at all. Why is that? Why are you hearing so much about the ICE-involved shooting in Maine, where you have a foreign national who was accused of driving his car at police officers, who was killed almost the exact same circumstances? In both cases, the person who was killed was not the target of the ICE raid himself. Why did you hear about the one in Maine but not the one in Texas? Because Maine is in play. Maine is a really hot seat that is in play. Democrats are trying to unseat Susan Collins. They had the Nazi rapist, allegedly, Graham Plattner, who was their candidate until a few days ago when finally he was removed. But they think they can take that seat. Whereas in Texas, they're going to have a hard time, even though they're putting some resources behind James Tallarico, the allegedly straight, allegedly male, allegedly Christian Democrat nominee for Senate there. That's probably not going to happen. So once again, for people who are analyzing this, who are just kind of normies, centrists, they're not all that ideological, just recognize you are being played by the liberal media. You are being played by the Democrat establishment. It's not that the incident in Maine was so much more egregious than the incident in Texas. They're basically the same incident. It's just that Democrats think they can win in Maine, and they probably can't win in Texas. It's the same thing we saw last year when there were ICE raids around the country, but the only one that people ever heard about was in Minnesota. And the reason they heard about it in Minnesota was not because ICE was especially super duper mean in Minnesota. The reason they heard about it in Minnesota is because the Democrats who run Minnesota and who run Minneapolis, in a state so liberal, it's the only one that didn't vote for Ronald Reagan in 1984, those Democrats made it an issue. They cynically exploited it as a political issue. And this gets me to my main point on how conservatives should think about these ICE-involved shootings. Because I know there's going to be this knee-jerk reaction to say, well, this is awesome, that's what you get. Because the libs are so absurd in how they talk about illegal immigration and law enforcement, there's a kind of knee-jerk reaction to say, yeah, well, you get what you get and you can't get upset. Deal with it. But that's not how we really feel. Do you know how I really feel about hearing that an ICE officer shot some foreign national in America? Even if the foreign national was like driving his car at him or whatever, even in that case, even in the case where the guy who was shot was totally in the wrong, I feel kind of sad. That's how I feel. I feel kind of sad. I don't think the ICE officer was in the wrong in really any of these cases where the information has come to light. I think the ICE officer was in the right. I think the people who were shot in all the cases where we've gotten all the information were in the wrong, like all the time. But I still feel kind of sad because I don't like it when people are killed, especially if the people have families, even if the people aren't like great guys. If they have families, if they, you say this didn't have to happen, and I wish the guy wasn't killed. I feel kind of sad, and I feel a simmering, growing anger toward the entire political establishment, but especially toward Democrats, who are the chief drivers of the illegal immigration problem. Because it didn't have to be this way. Had the Democrats not opened up the border, Had the Democrats not invited in millions of foreign nationals per year in contravention of our law, had the Democrats not totally cut off federal law enforcement from actually deporting those people, the guy in Maine would probably be alive. Even if the guy in Maine wasn't the target of the raid, ICE wouldn't be doing these big raids because they wouldn't have to do these big raids because the law would have been enforced for years and decades instead of neglected for that period of time. So I feel a real anger toward the Democrats. I'm not